Today we're going to be talking about catching, fixing, how do you report bugs up, how do you use mabl to get to the root cause of these issues, essentially how does mabl fit into your workflow of finding and resolving defects. I'm also joined by my friend Thomas. Thomas, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and I'll follow up.
Sure. So I'm Thomas. I'm a product manager here at mabl. I've been part of mabl since closed beta back in 2018, which is quite a long time in mabl years now. I think we haven't even been around for 4 yet. And I started my career in manual QA, later transitioning to customer success here at mabl, and then later on as a product manager.
Awesome. Yeah, Thomas has really not only seen the product and the company grow a lot, but he's also had his hands in all different parts of it too. So it's really great to do this session with him. I'm Daryl Ferris. I lead our team of solutions architects at mabl. That means I help teams who are new to the product evaluate it, determine whether it's a good fit for their needs, whether it's going to feel good in their workflows, and ultimately whether it's going to be the solution that helps get them to the next level in their testing efforts. I've worked for around 20 years in tech, all sorts of roles, starting off working at an internet provider, maintaining servers and modem banks. And here I am now in software testing. Somewhere along the way, I really developed a love of testing software and of the role itself, just kind of being, in the middle of the business and tech and all of these things was a really good place for me. And I came to mabl because I actually evaluated the mabl platform at my previous company when I was scaling up the QA capability there. And I was so impressed with it that here I am. So without further ado, Thomas, why don't you take us through the agenda and tell us what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. So we're going to be focusing on 3 main areas. As the title suggested, we're going to be talking about mabl's ability to help you catch and discover the root cause of issues faster. We're going to go through that process, see what it looks like in the mabl app. We're also going to touch on a bit the cost of quantifying the cost of late detection, both the effort involved as well as the impact on your users, your customers, the people who are using your product at the end of the day. And in the final piece of this, Daryl's going to go through validating the changes, validating bug fixes, as well as just general new code changes, and being able to merge with confidence at the end of the day, because that's what quality is about. So to continue on that, we're just going to go into a completely ridiculous hypothetical situation. Definitely has never impacted anyone here. But we're assuming that Daryl, our engineer here, is going to be shipping a big update to the product. So some big change, it's going to update a lot of the components, a lot of what we see every day and what users are using every day. I'm going to play the role of a QA person working through that. So we can start off assuming Daryl has pushed the change to dev, and now in my Slack, I start seeing this notification on the right. I start seeing that, my smoke plan has started failing in dev. It's the verify dashboard test. And let's go from there. So in terms of reporting, we really recommend starting with Slack, starting with the notification that you see on the right, because that's going to give you instantaneous notification as soon as something fails. This is especially helpful when you're testing more often, you're deploying more often. You don't often have the luxury of waiting around for a big release for things to come out and discovering those after the fact. So Slack is a great way. As soon as these plans fail, as soon as these insights are generated, you're going to get that info. And you can really curate how Slack's set up. So you can send everything through to Slack. If you just want a log of all the insights, all the things that are happening in your workspace. But in this example, we can curate something that only looks at my smoke plans, the ones that I've tagged with a specific plan label. And it's going to give me some helpful information when it does fail. So we can see that one of the 2 tests have failed, and we can see the error that actually happened. It looked like an assertion failed. And from this Slack message in general, we can go into the output, we can view the plan, we can even rerun it from here. If you don't have Slack set up, email works too. So you can configure your important plans to send to specific users or user groups. You can send it to your entire product team, just your QA team, and just yourself. But the important thing here is you want to make sure these are set up in a way that, like Slack, you're alerted as soon as it happens. You don't want to wait around for the default 24 hours for something to appear and for you to be alerted, because that's too much time. Things in dev could have gone to prod already by that time. That's a long time in the world of software. So you want to make sure these are sending as soon as an error occurs. But at the end of the day, you just want to make sure it's visible. No matter which one you're using, again, you want to be seeing those as soon as they happen.
Thanks, Thomas. Maybe just to kind of show you what that looks like in mabl. Also, I'm not sure what you're implying by my code being pushed that's causing this error. It must be some mistake. But focusing back on Slack, it's important to know that in mabl, you can have multiple iterations of these particular Slack integrations. So if we just take a look at one, for example, and look at some of the ways we can configure this, we can push groups of notifications to a given channel, or even mention certain users or the new Slack groups that were recently added, which is really great for kind of focusing the right messages to the right teams, and not, bogging everyone down in a bunch of Slack fatigue and messages they don't really care about. In mabl itself, there's a huge amount of customization here. If you want to know all of the positives and negatives, we'll let you do that. Other notifications, these tie to mabl insights, or those notifications that mabl generates through the course of executing your test. So for example, maybe you only want a given test plan to act as a monitor. So you're really only looking for, timing issues, things like that, or plans running and passing, really focusing those results. Same thing with insight statuses. Any of these you can customize as well and add in. And if you want to isolate down to particular plans based on any labels that you've configured, you can easily do that too. So for example, I only want to use this Slack notification if this particular plan spawns any of the above. And like I mentioned, you can do this in multiple flavors. You can set up as many of these as you like. Like Thomas mentioned, the key part here really is the visibility of it. Because when your tests are running and you're getting all of this data, it's most valuable when your teams can act on it quickly, right? If we want fast feedback, we have to kind of reciprocate and give our own feedback. So keeping that wheel turning, I think, is very important. And back to you, Thomas.
Oh, thank you, Daryl. Take this back from Daryl. Now, assuming we've moved into that Slack insight, we're viewing the output. One of the most important things you want to start with is the surrounding context. So very few of these failures occur in isolation, especially when you have shared steps, flows, reusable flows between different tests. You're running a lot of tests oftentimes. This one, we only ran a couple at the same time, but it's really important to start there at a higher level and then dig deeper. So we've gone straight to the output in this case. And one of the first things that we'd recommend doing is checking for visual changes and other errors. You can use the search bar in the timeline to notice specific errors or steps that may be taking abnormally long to execute. In this case, though, we can see on the right a little bit that the actual visual change detection has activated, and you can see current baseline side by side and yellow regions highlighted. And Daryl, if you just go to the next image here, you can see in a second the actual what the page was supposed to look like before. So in this case, a lot of the elements haven't even loaded, and that's a great indicator of, okay, something terribly wrong has happened here. So if we reviewed the failed step from before, we'd see it's an assertion, and the assertion failed because it didn't find what it was expecting. So Daryl, if we go on to the next image, you can also compare this to the previous runs. So in this case, this is particularly insightful because you can see, okay, this test was actually passing consistently up until this time. So I know most likely that this is going to be an issue that was caused by the most recent deployment that caused this smoke test to run on. And just going to the next page here, we can also download the relevant data there, which we can use later to sort of have an audit trail into exactly what happened and some of the circumstances that caused the error. One of the most helpful things is downloading the DOM snapshot. Although you can view this straight in the UI, it's just helpful to go through the DOM to see, okay, what exactly did mabl see when mabl was running this test? And if we had gone into this one, we would have seen, okay, those elements that we tried to interact with were not even there at all. There's something that has definitely gone wrong. If we keep going, we'll also want to trace this back to the deployment. A lot of information from GitHub is preserved here, as you may have seen in one of our previous talks on here. You'll get information exactly which can trace it back to the specific commits that were involved, the specific committer. We can see, if we wanted to, that Daryl was the one who pushed this large change that caused this issue. And that's going to be, I can see Daryl shaking his head there. That's going to be what's really critical here to really understand what happened, because now you have, okay, not just that this test failed, not just that this test failed on this particular time, but we also know exactly the change that triggered this test to run. And that's going to make the process of escalating it a lot easier. So if we keep going. On this one, we'll also want to create a JIRA ticket in a sec, but I'll let Daryl show you some of the capabilities before we get there.
Yeah. So taking a look at some of this logging output in a different example, we can see here that the final screenshot in this test, clearly shows that something wasn't found. And I can see my failed step up here. If I go back to the step that got us to this place, I can see that, in the screenshot, I'm clicking on this contact link, but over in my network activity here, I see this pulsing red box, meaning that something is interesting happening in there. And I can see I get several 404s. So that's indicative of a problem here as well. Kind of browsing through some of the other output that we have, Thomas mentioned you get a full snapshot of the HTML DOM at the time that the step was executed. So if there's ever a question of, was the element on the page, did it have a given class or state, that's easily discernible. Over time, when you're running these tests, we'll start gathering performance metrics as well. And you'll start to be able to determine whether or not a given step is taking longer or less time than usual. And mabl generates insights based on those, positive and negative. Sometimes we give good news too. Looking at kind of the passing version of this, if we go back, Thomas mentioned it's really easy to take a look at previous runs of a given test. You can see this one's fairly flaky. But that's because it's just for demo purposes. But we can see some other information. We have some visual changes happening in here as well. But more importantly, when I click this contact link in the passing run of the test and I go and take a look at our logs, I have those same 404s there, but I actually get to the page. So it's really helpful to kind of take all of this information in context and use your powers as a human to determine where this problem might lie in your knowledge of your product. And like Thomas mentioned, a lot of these bits of information are downloadable and attachable. We'll see that after Thomas's next segment. But maybe just to show you an example of why someone might want to use something like this, if I download this step trace file, whether I'm a tester or even a developer coming in to resolve this, oftentimes, we lack information or clarity to resolve things efficiently. But, I can pull down this step trace file and see, right at the moment that this page transition actually happens, I can see where the time that it's taking to see this page is being spent. Is it some scripts that are running for an extra long time? Is it just, Chrome doing its thing? This is really, really great info. And the same thing exists for any network activity. You can download a HAR file, open that up in DevTools and get some deeper insight. So it's very easy, I think, in mabl to kind of go just beyond pass and fail. We really put a lot of information in front of users to help them with the context of, when, why, and where a certain error may have occurred. And back to you, my friend.
Thanks, Daryl. So continuing on the theme of, okay, now I've identified exactly the change that caused this issue, I'd say we have enough information to go and escalate this, create a JIRA ticket for this. And this is very easy with our JIRA server as well as our JIRA cloud integration. Most importantly though, with one click, you can basically add all of the relevant information that you need, which is most importantly, the failing step, the screenshot of failure, and the test run ID and link to mabl results and log. So that test run ID is going to be what's particularly helpful for Daryl as an engineer to run these tests locally and get feedback and validation almost instantly, compared to him having to spend the time to go back through the mabl UI, configure the same sort of setup that this test had, and run those, get those results again. It's really going to be a much shorter feedback loop for him later down the line. So I'd go on and create this. I'd assign Daryl as the engineer accountable, and then we'll keep going. Daryl, I think you're muted there. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Thanks. One of the things that I really like about our JIRA integration is that we bring issues that you generate through mabl back into mabl. So it kind of takes away the noise of, what might be in your normal backlogs and things like that, and really helps, folks who are focusing on this aspect of quality to see their issues in the right place. So for example, in the mabl UI, I can see all of the issues that I may have created through my use of the platform, but I can also go in and take a look at a given test and see any issues that have been opened against this particular test. So it's another way, I think, of getting a nice tighter slice of data that you might be interested in. And like Thomas mentioned, once you have that JIRA ticket created, we'll automatically populate that ticket with some of those artifacts that we looked at, the step trace, DOM snapshots, HAR files, things like that. So when it does come time for someone to pick this ticket up and start working on it, not only do they have an easy way of getting back in and taking a look at the results, but they also have some attachments right here ready for them to kind of get started right away. So it's not only is it just, making it so you can create an issue from mabl and getting it into JIRA, but it's actually, we're automating some of this, data gathering and collection. So the tester doesn't have to do it, but then the developer, also comes back with fewer questions, again, making that process, more efficient.
Great. So moving on, just wanted to quickly touch on the cost of late detection. So according to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, there's 6 times more effort to fix a bug in production than locally. That's a lot, but I don't think it accounts for the whole picture here. So there's more than just engineering hours involved. As a product manager, I see this a lot. Probably Daryl sees the opposite side of it for the issues that he reports. You don't always know immediately what's the impact of the issue. You have to quantify that. You have to go out and seek the data, see your other systems that are reporting the error to see how frequent it is. In this case, the dev one, it's still in dev. It may be faster to resolve, but if it's an issue that's already in production, if it's now an incident, who's held accountable? Who's taken off their work now to work on this bug? Is it someone who is entirely different? Someone who's on call who now has to rotate off of their critical work to resolve this? So it isn't just the time of the engineer who shipped it who's involved, but it's also the engineers and the team, the QA members who have to clean up a lot of this. And then generally, does the team even have the capacity to fix this now? Is my team as a PM already invested heavily in resolving other issues, paying down other debt? It's harder to make that immediate switch to fix this bug when it's many, many layers beyond just some local issue that the engineer can quickly spin up a new build to fix. And then also, what do we need to interrupt? So again, are there other issues that are currently being worked on, higher severity issues, other tech debt items or feature work, things that are shipping out for other customers that needs to be added to this equation. So there's a lot of cost just beyond more effort for the engineer to actually resolve this.
Some really great points, Thomas. I think on the other side of this, right, there's support costs and just costs to the perception of your product. I really like this slide. This comes from one of our previous Dev Test Ops landscape surveys. Highly recommend go to mabl, find these surveys and reports. They're amazing and full of great data. What we can see here is that, you know, the teams that have a really good testing strategy, and this is, you know, again, from a DevOps perspective, so iterative, you know, it's well integrated. You can see that their users are just happier. And as we, you know, go up to the other extreme, the folks that are, you know, more heavily reliant on manual or just, you know, ad hoc testing, or maybe have a less mature strategy, if one at all, you know, we can see terrible, you know, 22% just not doing any testing. These has customer outcomes as well. Your users want to feel like they're, you know, using a solid product, especially if they're paying for it. You know, the stakes are even a bit higher as a vendor. You know, we're sort of responsible for delivering a quality experience for all of our users. And so, of course, you know, given the field that we're in, you know, we're big fans of DevOps. We, you know, we love a culture of quality. But I hope that this lands on folks that it's not just about the sort of operational cost internally of why you want to shift left and start bringing these things earlier into the process. It's also the impact on users and the impact, you know, potentially on your business as well. So switching back to our example where I allegedly pushed some bad code to production, we don't know if that's true. However, what could I have done thinking about shifting left? And, you know, clearly there wasn't a whole lot of testing going on before, you know, I pushed this code and broke Thomas's tests. But, you know, thinking about mabl and how this might work, let me switch back and I'll bring over a VS Code window. So I think most folks in this session are probably mabl users, and they see, you know, their test running in the cloud. You know, we're doing cross-browser things and screenshots like we saw in the log output. But it's also, I think, important to point out that you can also run your mabl test locally against your local dev environment, against any branch or feature branch that you might have deployed. It's very easy to configure those. So here, before I even check in any code, I can do some quick validations against here without ever launching a web browser. Now, if I wanted to, I could also spin this up in a web browser and, you know, see that there as well. I think for the sake of this example, we'll just kind of stop there, and then switch back over to taking a look at how this sort of plays out. So I just ran some tests on my local environment. My next step is probably to, you know, commit that code and submit a PR. So in my PRs, I can also have some mabl test running as well and get a little bit of a sense of confidence that, oh, great, all of these checks have passed. I've got some green. Whoever is going to come squash this merge button on these, you know, harmless changes that, you know, I just really need to get out there as quickly as possible. You know, someone else can come behind me and click this merge button and say, great, you know, we have a little bit of testing coverage. And these are, again, UI tests. You know, I think we're maybe a bit more accustomed nowadays to seeing unit tests and, you know, API or integration level tests, but these are UI tests that are running. And so I, you know, click merge, my code gets merged, things get deployed. And then of course, you know, as my pipeline continues, I'll start running some additional tests and, as part of my build process and whatnot, and getting output here. These successes and failures and whatnot, as Thomas showed earlier, show up in Slack. So I think this is sort of what a tight-knit pipeline really looks like. And if we just hop back into the mabl interface real quick and take a look at some of these integrations that we have, it's not just GitHub and GitHub Actions that you can do this with, but it's also tools like Azure DevOps. Tons of folks are using Azure DevOps now. We can integrate with Jenkins, our old friend, GitLab, Bamboo, all of these things mabl plays very nicely with, and enables you to not only build your test and get them running on schedules and whatnot, but really integrating it in with your development pipeline. So you can truly test earlier and test more often, and doing it, I think, together as a team is really, really important here as well, right? So why would I want to run those headless tests? Well, they're a lot faster. I can do it without kind of leaving my little development world, which is, my happy space. And from the mabl perspective, your local runs don't deduct from your monthly quota of tests that you're allowed to run. Those are only the cloud executions. So run your headless tests and run those local executions as much as possible. There are benefits, I think, for your process, but also, from the billing perspective as well. We saw how we can have mabl integrated in with your pull request process. I showed it in GitHub Actions, which is really cool and easy to set up if you haven't done it yet. It's just a few lines of code from YAML. And we have some examples of that you can take a look at as well. But ultimately, this is all about building confidence in our release process. So not only do I want to feel confident when I'm committing code, and I'm not going to embarrass myself like I clearly did a bit ago with this bad code that I pushed, but now, as a developer, I can feel more confident that I'm submitting quality code to my repos and that that's going to make it into our product. And then once you do all of this, I think, sort of switching back, to a tester perspective, or even as a developer, right? If we're all responsible for testing, we should all be looking at these results and keeping a pulse check on where things are. But, once you start seeing some green things come back in your results, go back into mabl, run that test again, or go find that Slack notification and click that rerun button in there. And make sure that your tests are continuing to pass. Make sure that maybe, something doesn't have to get refactored into your test. Go back into Jira and update the status in there. And then ultimately, you're kind of done, and you can sort of begin this whole process again the next time an issue comes up. So just to recap, Thomas, you want to take the first half and give us your key gems of wisdom?
Sure. So we talked about catching issues as soon as they happen, making sure you have a good reporting set up there, whether it's more customized email reports or more customized Slack notifications that are actually going to be letting you know as soon as the changes happen, as soon as the failures happen. We talked about tools to find the failure faster within mabl, looking at visual changes to determine areas of the app that have changed, using the data that's also there, the screenshots, the DOM Snapshot, HAR file, and the list goes on there. And lastly, ensuring the issue is traceable, making sure that you export it to a system where your developers can access it, where there's a source of truth as to whether the issue is resolved or not. And then we also touched on the cost of late detection. I touched on the organizational cost, the effort involved, and Daryl, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, and I talked about all the grief we cause our customers when we release poor quality things. We talked about how to test earlier and test, different things that we might be used to testing on our local dev environments, UI test namely, the value that brings, how to get those issues in how to get those processes automated in a pipeline so they're repeatable. I always say, if you're just getting started, write one test, wire that one test up to your CI/CD process, because that's going to pave the way for you to do so much more. And then we talked about resolving issues confidently, kind of from the start to the finish, right? Detecting it, reporting it, how the developer comes in and works with that, and then what the response is from the reporter, right? Check it, make sure it works. Make sure that the status in those systems that you're pushing this information up to are also up to date. So everyone's working, again, with a source of truth as to what the current status of their product quality is. And with that, I think we love to open it up to questions. Thomas and I both have our contact information on here. Highly encouraged to reach out to us. We love talking about all things testing, all things mabl, so don't hesitate. But we'd love to field some questions now.
Great. Thank you both, Daryl and Thomas. A lot of terrific content in there, and I'm sure our attendees appreciate it. We are over the end of the time of the session. However, I am going to throw one question at you because I've got a couple of votes in the platform. So do you have any best practices you can share for setting up Slack notifications for a whole QA team?
Sure, I guess I'll jump on that one. Thank you, Katie. I think the best practice there is just making sure that you have it set up. One of the most important things is going to be plan labels, but don't be afraid to, as Daryl showed us, create multiple integrations. You don't need to have one integration that does everything. You can have integrations that are only sending things when your smoke tests send, and that can send to you personally. But what's really important there is to make sure you're leveraging all those capabilities to sort of have the segmented integrations that work best for you. Make sure your critical ones are the ones that are actually pinging users, not pinging users, but pinging the rest of your team that are actually using mabl. And then make sure the ones that sort of the more noise that you actually don't really want to alert on and don't need to know at the end of the day if it actually occurred. You can always find out later. Making sure that's going in a channel that isn't the same place that your sort of ops notifications are going from mabl. So making sure at the end of the day that your smoke tests are always visible, your regression tests, you always know when those are happening, and then not being afraid to get into having multiple different versions of the same configuration set up and plugins set up to make sure that you're not only sending a certain subset of tests to one place. You can send it to multiple people. You can set it up however you like. And that's how we have it set up at mabl. We have our most important ones sending one place.